right, so there are books written that would argue against the things I'm saying. Fair enough. And they would argue that the reason why we believe in God and believe these things is really, again, just a part of natural selection. It's simply what our minds did to survive the ages. It's what we had to do in order to stay alive. We had to believe that there was life on the other side of death, or we would all just be really pitiful when somebody died. We had to believe that there was a God who would judge our rights and our wrongs. Otherwise, there was no real motive to do anything moral in life, and we couldn't even define morality. And we really needed, therefore, something to explain what happened all the way back in the beginning. And so we came up with God. We created God. At the end of the day, what they say. See the irony? This is exactly what Romans is saying. At the end of the day, either God has created us, or we have created God. If you ask the question, do atheists believe in God? I turn around, does God believe in atheists? So we have created all these things out of our own mind. And they say that if we were rational about our thinking and took a step back, we would realize that the reason why we think these things is just the evolution of a natural process, and at the end of the day, it ought not to be trusted. Now, here's where I want to turn this thing on its head. This is kind of a fun moment. Because atheists and scientists in this ballpark would say that if you believe in God, you're delusional. In fact, technically, according to DSM-4, you're paranoid, psychotic, and delusional. And we could have you wrapped up in those nice white jackets with lots of straps on it, and give you a cozy, padded room just for you, because you're irrational. You're neurotic. All of these things. And if you were a rational person, you wouldn't believe in them. But isn't that just as true of these things down here? In other words, scientists want us to believe that we can't trust our senses when it comes to these things, religion and God. But many philosophers and scientists have also agreed that the scientific community has the same problem. In other words, anybody who would say that these things are the truths that we ought to believe rationally bears the same burden of asking whether or not they can trust their own senses. And there are two theologians that we want to think about in connection with this. One is David Hume. David Hume was a really great... He was on the other side, but in a sense ended up making a great argument for God. Because what he did was he leveled the playing field. The Enlightenment was reason's response to religion, saying, you've been telling us for years that the earth is flat. And now we know that that's not true. And if we can't trust that, then everything else must be punted as well. So the Enlightenment was this really big epistemological schizophrenia, just to say, we can't trust what we think. And that was imposed upon religion. We can't trust what we think about God. We have to turn to science and study our way out of this. But scientists and philosophers have eventually admitted that at the end of the day, this circle is true. It's like 10 times I've said at the end of the day. That when the scientist looks at his stuff under a microscope or does his work, he's just as biased as the theologian. He looks at his stuff through a lens, not just physically, but ultimately in his own mind. His own philosophy and worldview influences what he does. And Hume said, we can't really even know if what we know is something that we actually know, because our minds can be playing tricks on us. If I can't trust religion, says Hume, neither can I ultimately trust science. I, at the end of the day, have a huge conundrum. I cannot trust either truly. One of our family favorite movies is The Matrix. Everybody's seen The Matrix, right? Okay, if not, you can't start your classes until you've seen this movie. There has to be a rule about that. So at the beginning of the movie, this little character, Neo, meets this group of people when he wakes up from his dream. And there's this girl that he's supposed to follow, says the computer, follow the white rabbit. And she's standing there holding this box, and the box is actually a book. And the book title you open up is Simulacra and Simulation. And this is sort of a Buddhism meets science. It says basically, how do you know your life is not a dream? How do you know that this whole thing is not just a dream and your perception is tricking you? Just like in the movie The Matrix, everybody's actually asleep, and only those in Zion have been awakened. It's a parody on Christianity. Zion is the goal. That's where people are really awake. But everyone else, includes you and me, we're actually asleep. And this is a dream. And so your senses can't be trusted. In a sense, that's the honest conclusion of David Hume. I can't trust my senses. I don't know if I can trust religion. And so I just don't trust anything. Life is completely disarray, intellectually, morally, religiously. And that's the logical consequence of going down this trail. Well, what does it prove? Well, what it proves is, go back to the phrase I used last week, is that we ought to doubt our doubt.